Inside the Sixers time, we'll take a look at the Sixers win last night. It's a good example of why you shouldn't get too high with a win and too low with a loss against the Cavs. It's brought to you by Jenkins. Call Jenkins for heating and air conditioning installation service and maintenance, plumbing or drain cleaning service, 609-641-6440 for Jenkins here on the Sports Bash. All right, inside the Sixers, Kevin McCormick, our Sixers contributor from 97.3 ESPN.com all season long. Now, he'll be in the building tomorrow night for Sixers Jazz. That will be the final game before the break. So we got a lot to talk about with Kevin here as we get ready for the second half of the season. And let's start with this, Kevin, with obviously everyone is focused on improving this team. You know, what we saw last night, that's not who they are. What we saw on Saturday, that's not who they are. But I think what we all recognize is they need something. To you, what is that something that they need the most?
The most, I would have to say, would be another ball handler for that second unit. Although Shake Milton is coming off a great game last night against Indiana, that second unit has really seen it struggle in recent weeks, and it became extremely apparent when they went out west and lost Shake Milton early on after he rolled his ankle against Sacramento. I think if you can add another guard to that second unit who's looked at more of kind of a pure point guard who can allow Shake Milton to, be more of that kind of two guard and embrace his ability to score the ball on all three levels, I think it could be a big boost to that second unit.
All right. So Lowry's name comes up a lot. Obviously, 30 million is a little bit of an obstacle. Where would you stand on a guy like Oladipo versus Lowry? Would you prefer Lowry but settle for Oladipo, or would you rather Oladipo?
If I had to pick one, I think I'd go Lowry, just because although Oladipo is nice in itself, I don't think he's the kind of rental you want to go and look for. He already just turned down that deal, that extension from Houston. There's been about 1,000,001 reports over the past year about how Miami's his destination. So I think no matter where he ends up this season, once the offseason comes, he's going to be going right down south to team up with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And to get a deal done, you're looking at putting in Danny Green and either one of Mike Scott, a Terrence Ferguson, or a Tony Bradley. So although you'd give up less in terms of assets, if you got an Oladipo, you'd still have things left over to continue to upgrade this roster. I don't know if Oladipo really gives you that much. You'd have to insert him into the starting lineup. Although he shoots a lot of threes per game, he doesn't really make them. So I think in terms of the spacing standpoint, that might create a little bit of a weakness, because although Danny Green's been up and down, when he's been on, him and Seth Curry have done an amazing job really opening up that floor for Embiid and Simmons to just do their work around the rim.
All right, that's an interesting point, because I agree. He does not shoot the three well, but he does shoot a lot of them. He does score about 19, 20 points a game. So I guess the question would be, could you put Oladipo with the second unit and run him with Milton, and then keep him out there like they do with Milton sometimes and have him run with the ones where he's playing about 25 to 30 minutes with the twos, him and Milton together, and then he's getting a run with Simmons and Harris. Those guys stay out there most of the time anyway. That, to me, is interesting because he's a guy that can get me a bucket with the second team, and if he's hot, you get him. Now, the problem with him, he doesn't shoot the three well, but he can get a bucket.
I don't know how I'd feel about that, just because with having to insert Danny Green in a trade like that, obviously that opens up a spot in the starting lineup. And if you want him to run with the second unit, you now have to bring somebody from that bench unit into the starting lineup. And with, maybe a Matisse Thybulle, but then it goes back to the spacing aspect of it, where it's even worse than Oladipo because Matisse doesn't even attempt the threes at the volume that Victor Oladipo is this season. So although Matisse would be defensively, I think your easiest pick there would be Furkan Korkmaz. And although he played well in the starting lineup with the Toronto Raptors, I don't know if that's the necessary upgrade, even if it means having Oladipo run the Shake Milton in that second lineup. Maybe a realistic option would be trying to turn Oladipo into that. You have him in with the starters at the beginning of the game and closing games, and then you can tweak the rotation in a sense to have him run with the bulk of his minutes being with that second unit, and then you can give more time like a Korkmaz with the starters from a floor spacing aspect. But I don't know how that would work. I mean, the only thing I would say about Oladipo is, like you said, he's a guy that can put the ball on the floor. He can create. And I think if you can add a guard like that with the starting lineup. It could help you late in games, especially with how Doc Rivers has done a great job exploring Ben Simmons off the ball with the dribble handoff game and using him as a roller in the pick and roll.
Well, my concern is, Kevin, and let's see what you think. Kevin McCormick from 97.3 ESPN.com is with us. Milton, I like. I'm not trashing Milton, but in a playoff situation, late in a playoff series, I got a 24-year-old guy. I don't know that he's consistent enough that I know, hey, he's going to get me 14 tonight coming off the bench. I feel like I need a more veteran presence that can score off the bench. And I know Oladipo might not love doing it, and Lowry might not love doing it, but I almost feel like that's a better – they need someone there because I don't know that – like Milton gives me 25 last night or whatever it is. He plays great, but the next night he gives me 4. And in a playoff 7-game series, can I depend on Milton as my main source of offense off the bench?
I'd have to say yes and no. If you go back and you look at the playoff series against Boston last season, although
there's the problem, by the way. Yes and no. Some nights yes, some nights no.
But I wouldn't say it's more from the inconsistency aspect. I think it's just since we've only seen such a small sample size of Shake Milton playoff basketball, and it was running with the starting lineup, I thought he was very impressive in that series against the Celtics, even though it ended up resulting in a sweep. So I think he could be that guy. I think his defense has really improved this season. I think that was kind of the main kicker of what made him kind of look like a weakness against the Celtics in the playoffs last year. And if you look at the beginning of this season, we were talking about Shake Milton potentially being a guy who could be in the 6th Man of the Year candidate. I think him coming back, still trying to get back to form after rolling his ankle, has definitely been effective, or affected his kind of roller coaster play. But come playoffs, I think you really could rely on a guy like Shake Milton. Although this is really only his 2nd full season, you also need to account as a guy that spent multiple years in college. He spent his time polishing his game with Connor Johnson in the G League. So it's not like he's more of a younger prospect. He's polished. He knows his game, and I think come playoffs, he could still continue to be a piece for this team.
Hey, I like him. I'm not sitting here saying that he's not a piece. They should. I'm just saying if he's your 6th guy, are you good enough? Essentially, he's 24. At 27, yeah, you might be good enough if he's your 6th guy. At 24, he might be too inconsistent if you have ideas of making a very deep playoff run. Kevin McCormick is with us. You have written a lot about the G League stuff and watch a lot of that. We've talked about Paul Reed. You've seen him a lot more than probably most people listening today. Is he a guy that his game could – now, they put that rule in today where G League two-way guys, the 50 games is going to be pretty much wiped out. They're going to be able to play playoffs. I don't know, but do you look at him as a guy that can help this team out at all this year?
This year, I would say no.
I mean, maybe 40%. You know what you would hear from a casual fan who just says, hey, they got a guy who's 6'10", shooting 40% from 3. He rebounds. He scores. Who is this guy?
The thing with Paul Reed is that at his time at DePaul, they used him a lot at the 5 spot. And even with the G League, Connor Johnson's been embracing that as well. And although it's done well for his game, my main question with that has been, if you want to polish him for the NBA level, realistically with this roster, you still need to give him minutes at the 4 as well because, with bigger NBA centers, he might not be able to squeak by at playing the center spot at all times. So I think there's a lot of potential there, but I don't know if this year's the year for them. His 3-point shot has drastically improved, which is a great sign. His offense is strong, but he's still just such a raw talent. And I think he could get by on his athleticism, but he still needs a little bit to go. I think next year is more the year of maybe Paul Reed can come in and compete for a spot with, all the open spots that are going to be on the roster next season. But, I mean, if the Sixers pull away late in the season and you can have that stretch of games where Embiid and Simmons and Harris don't need to play as much because you've kind of locked up your playoff road, maybe you throw Paul Reed out there and you try little things. I think there's some potential there as a small ball 5, but realistically, he still needs to grow at being an NBA 4.
All right. What is your thoughts on Tobias Harris and playing tomorrow night? I mean, I did see Doc kind of indicated that he almost was going to play last night. Do we feel that Harris will play tomorrow?
Seeing the way that Tobias has just been a workhorse for this team since he's got here, I want to say yes. Do I think it's the right idea? No. This is a guy that's been out there playing hard every night, up until he got hurt against Dallas. I think you just give him that extra day, yeah, you want to head into the All-Star break on a high note, but in reality, you also want to be ready to come strong when that second half of the season starts. So if it were me, I personally didn't want him to play any of these games after he went down. Just give him that extra time, let him have the All-Star break, come back, just be completely fresh and ready to hit the ground running. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's out on the floor tomorrow night against Utah.
All right, and with that, I mean, obviously it adds another layer of offense. I want to get your thoughts on the offense that we saw last night. Sixers, shoot 43% from threes, 35 three-pointers, 13 from Korkmaz attempts, 5 from Milton. What'd you think of the volume of three? I mean, I would imagine that some would say they don't shoot enough. 35, not enough. That's still bottom 10 of the league, I think.
A lot of people say they don't shoot enough. One guy in particular that said it on Saturday was Joel Embiid himself. He said he still feels this team doesn't get up enough threes. So seeing them come out and put the emphasis on hunting three-point shots is crucial because, like I said earlier, with guys like Simmons and Embiid running your offense, you need that floor open. And you saw a lot of times in that Indiana game where because of the way they were shooting the ball from deep, it really opened up the floor. There was one instance about midway through the second quarter where Joel Embiid got the ball at the top of the key, and Justin Holiday second-guessed if he wanted to leave Furkan Korkmaz or not. And in that indecision, allowed Embiid that kind of runway to the rim, and then Miles Turner switched on to Furkan Korkmaz, which just completely opened up the lane. So when the guys are taking them and making threes, it adds another dynamic to this offense, and it's a dynamic they're going to need with the way that Embiid and Simmons are at their best, when Embiid's dominating in the face-up game in the mid-range, and Simmons is just attacking downhill.
Do you trust Korkmaz?
Honestly, no. But
I think when he's catching and shooting, when he's catching and shooting, when he's got that fluid catch shoot, he's all right. But it's the other times.
He has a deadly pump fake, and it's a really nice move that he's put into his arsenal. And I think when he's confident and he's feeling himself, I think he's a great piece, but he's just been very, very streaky. So I don't know if come playoffs, that's a guy you really want to fully rely on.
Joel Embiid, after the game, said his ankle was pretty sore, but said that he's willing to keep playing hurt in pursuit of the East #1 seed. I guess the question for you is, will the organization follow his feelings there and play him if he's less than 100%?
So far, it seems like they're going to let him run when he wants to run. There's been a couple games this season where he's been listed as questionable, and it's really come down to how he's felt in shoot-around. So I think it's one of those, if he's going to continue to go them and he's going to say he's all right, that they're just going to continue to let him run, especially if he does have his eyes set on that MVP trophy. He's going to need to be out there to play a good amount of games if he wants to win that award.
I'll tell you, I was just looking at the standings, and we're only halfway through. But I'll ask you the question that I was asking before. If they're the #1 seed, do you view them as a legit title contender? Or if they're the #1 seed with this team, do you view them as that Hawks team from a couple of years ago, or the Raptors when they had Lowry and DeRozan, where, you're the #1 seed, but you're not the favorite? Would they be the favorite if they're the #1 seed, or kind of one of those other teams?
I think no matter what, in a grand scheme, they're never really going to be looked at as the universal favorite just because of the star power that Brooklyn has. I think come playoffs, everyone's just going to be saying that they're the team that should be, that team that's going to come out of the East. But as currently constructed, I would say they have a chance. I don't know how confident I am just because we've seen the bench issues, and although the starting lineup's been great, if you can't even have sustainable bench minutes, it's really going to hurt you come postseason. So if Daryl Morey can go out and use the assets they have to kind of round out this bench, I think it might convince me a little more that they can be that team to be the favorite to come out of the East. But as currently constructed, I would still say you need some improvements around the edges.
All right, he's Kevin McCormick. Follow him at Kevin McCormick, MC. Man, this is all too confusing for me. You tell him.
Kevin MCC 973.
There we go. Kevin MCC 973. Follow him for tomorrow night for the news on the Sixers. He will be in the building for Sixers and Jazz. And then, Kevin, the next time you're in the building, there's going to be fans in there.
Who'd have thought?
Where are they going to sit them? You guys have got those great seats right now.
Yeah, I hope I don't lose my killer view.
I know, right? I'm thinking the media people,
I've been spoiled.
if they get moved out of those seats and go back to where you normally sit, not good.
I've been spoiled so far. I don't know how I'm going to feel once fans are back in the arena.
I know, and I said to myself, what are they going to have, like 3,000 fans? I don't know. I mean, I imagine they're going to keep the tarping up on the one side, so the fans will probably be on where you guys are sitting, I would imagine, right?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they try and open up behind the baskets and try and space. I think you could still keep the media where they are and maybe space everyone out properly still around the lower bowl. So everyone, like the fans that are still there, still have a good view. But I don't know. It's just one of those you have to wait and see.
All right. Kevin will be there Wednesday night for all the details. Go to 973ESPN.com. Kevin, appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gil. Take care.
All right. Inside the Sixers, Kevin McCormick here. Of course, our Sixers contributor from 973 ESPN.com. Those guys do a great job on the Sixers. Kevin McCormick, Jay Blevins, and, of course, Paul Hudrick, who is back tomorrow for Inside the Sixers.